Jack studied at ADA. He was about to finish foundation course at this academy. He was a kind of person that always didn't care about his lessons and tried to find entertainment even at the academy. He had very positive energy and he was always cheerful. One day, he decided to travel to USA, Miami via work and travel company to get a job and to entertain. He took his ID card, foreign passport, tickets and etc. Then he left home and reached their airport. It would be his first travel to overseas and so he was very excited. He didn't believe his eyes that he was traveling alone for the first time. To go to Miami, firstly, he had to go to Rome. He got on the airplane and after a while it took off. However, he was unaware of unforgettable adventure awaiting him. At last, he reached Rome. After leaving the airplane, he could find a free seat and get a little bit relaxed. His next flight would be in 9 hours, so he tried to find a good way to spend his time. Suddenly, he saw an ad on the monitors that was about a famous restaurant which was at the center of Rome. He decided to go to that restaurant to have lunch. He took a taxi and went to the restaurant which was called Speciale Toscane. He ordered a big size of local Italian pizza and cola as well. Near his table, a very beautiful and fascinating doll was sitting and eating her meal. While he was drinking cola, he suddenly saw her and for a few minutes, he kept the gulp of cola inside his mouth. He couldn't swallow it. She admired him. Suddenly, she caught his glass and felt a little bit surprised and gazed at Jack strangely. But then, she gathered herself and tried to attract Jack's attention. After a while, they introduced themselves, and the adventure started for Jack. Jack found out the girl was an Italian and her name was Helen. After a while, she offered him to make a tour to some amazing places of Rome. Jack was impressed by the beauty of the historical monuments, buildings of Rome. But this wasn't the end. Helen invited him to the party which her friend had organized. However, Jack said to her that he was short of time, but Helen still insisted on. Although Jack had to refuse to Helen, he couldn't resist her, but he had only 2 hours. At the party, Jack danced and drank. But after a few cups of drink, Jack felt that something was going wrong. He was getting dreamier and dreamier. Then he asked Helen about it, and she told him, "Don't think a lot, just dance, and drink as much as you can. I will arrange another ticket for tomorrow, don't worry." But unfortunately he was getting sleepier and sleepier.
The next day, in the morning, Jack was sleeping in a bedroom. When he woke up, he found himself in an unknown house. He was surprised and afraid. Also, he had a strong headache and tried to understand what had happened to him. He heard some voice which came from the next room. He approached the door and opened it. In the next room, Helen was having a breakfast and talking with her friend. When they saw Jack, her friend took out his gun towards him. He said that they were a mafia and had taken Jack's both ID card and passport. They threatened that they wouldn't give his documents back if he didn't do what they wanted. Jack was obliged to agree with them. Helen told Jack that he should hand in the envelope to somebody in the same restaurant where they had met, and after that he would be able to get his boss ID card and passport. Then he took an envelope and went to that restaurant by a taxi. When Jack got to the restaurant, he looked around to find that person, but unfortunately he saw a police car near the restaurant and began to get impatient and afraid. Unintentionally, he looked inside the car several times, which attracted the attention of the police. Suddenly, they called Jack, and as soon as he heard them, he started to run and took the first taxi he saw on the way. He said to the driver to be as fast as possible and hide him from the police. Fabio was a professional taxi driver and so he could help Jack. They went to Fabio's house and Jack explained everything to him. To his surprise, the driver said he also knew Helen and her mafia as well. In brief, Fabio was cross with them and wanted to revenge them throughout his life. After that, they decided to revenge Helen and get back Jack's passport. They made a plan to reveal their confidential deeds to the police, but they needed a lot of money for that. Jack suddenly remembered about the envelope, and he found it and opened it. There was a huge amount of money inside the envelope, so he was happy. Fabio had a friend who worked for Helen. Fabio called him to know the date of the next crime which they were planning to do. After learning the whole details, with the help of his friend, they called the police and together made a surprise attack on them. Finally, they were able to destroy one of the biggest mafias of Rome. When they searched Helen's house, Jack had two purposes. Firstly, he wanted to know why Helen used him as a victim. To find the answer, he looked around her room. Suddenly, he saw Helen's laptop. Luckily, it wasn't still turned off. Jack quickly looked at the laptop and saw a recent email which she had sent before her death. It was written like that. A few days ago, I was in the center of Rome at Specialite Toscana restaurant. I was thinking about Rossi. Up to now, he has murdered lots of mafia bosses as a killer, and as a result, we have gotten a huge amount of money. But now he is in danger. The head of mafia, Mr. Adriano, wants Rossi's head. Unfortunately, we don't have alternative choices. We have to agree with Mr. Adriano. However, that day, luckily, while I was eating my meal, I saw a young boy who completely looked like Rossi. To be sure for myself, I looked at the photo of Rossi in my phone. And my aim is to introduce Jack to Mr. Adriano as Rossi and save Rossi's life this way. Sincerely, Helen. After reading, he was just shocked. He didn't know what to do. He was just grateful to God. But unfortunately, he couldn't find his ID card and foreign passport as well. Helen had burned them, and so Jack was very upset and depressed. He understood that in this case, he would have a big problem because getting a new ID card and passport was a very complicated issue and it would take a long time. At midnight, before sleeping, Jack thought about his parents, friends, ADA community, shortly about everything which he had experienced, seen, because he wouldn't be able to see them for a long time. And after a few minutes, he fell asleep. When he woke up, he found himself on the airplane. He was very surprised and looked around. And then he took a deep breath and was very thankful for God, because he understood that everything which had happened to him was just a dream. He was just on the way to Rome. Then he put on his headphones to listen to music. But